5 of our Supreme Court justices have betrayed our Constitution, they betrayed marriage, and they have betrayed God himself. What will happen? Well, the dissenting judges are indicating it could lead to violence, even revolution. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
Greetings, friend, and welcome to a 4-part series on the godless decision from the Supreme Court, commonly called Obergefell. If you miss any of these series, you can see them for free at our website, voiceofresistance.com. The Supreme Court, or 5 members of the Supreme Court, have betrayed our Constitution, they have betrayed marriage, and they have betrayed Almighty God himself. The question in today's episode is, will the justices face justice? Or will America face justice? Jesus said, "He that has ears to hear, let him hear." The Supreme Court has actually overthrown our Constitution and the rule of law in our country. Their 5-4 ruling for gay marriage in Obergefell, it's nothing less than a coup d'etat. You and I no longer live in a free country. And by the way, I've read every single word from every single judge. The gut-wrenching conclusion isn't a personal opinion. If you've watched my latest TV show in this area, or if you go to our website, you know that the conclusion of all 4 dissenting Supreme Court justices is that this was a violation of the Constitution, but perhaps more importantly for today's show, that it may result in violence or in revolution. Justice Scalia declared Obergefell to be a judicial putsch. A putsch, it's a German word, is a secretly plotted and suddenly executed attempt to overthrow a government. In the legal sense, a putsch is treason. It's punishable in all nations by imprisonment or death. Putsch is the word used to describe Adolf Hitler's failed attempt to seize control of the German government in 1923. In case you forgot, Hitler was tried and imprisoned for his treason. Putsch, the word putsch, is a highly charged, exact, legal word. Let me tell you something. Scalia is no dummy. He deliberately chose that word. Scalia also said he wanted to, quote, call attention to this court's threat to American democracy. Again, his words are not hyperbole. He believes we have already been overthrown. Here's what he says. Today's decree says that my ruler, the ruler of 320 million Americans coast to coast, is a majority of the 9 lawyers on the Supreme Court. This practice of constitutional revision by an unelected committee of 9, always accompanied as it is today by extravagant praise of liberty, robs the people of the most important liberty they asserted in the Declaration of Independence and won in the Revolution of 1776, the freedom to govern themselves. Chief Justice Roberts' dissenting opinion is equally ominous. He alludes that we may be headed for civil war or revolution. Now remember, this is the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. These are his words, not mine. He said, Dred Scott's holding, that was the slavery holding, Dred Scott's holding was overruled on the battlefields of the Civil War. Those who founded our country would not recognize the majority's conception of the judicial role. They, after all, risked their lives and fortunes for the precious right to govern themselves. They would never have imagined yielding that right on a question of social policy to unaccountable and unelected judges. There will be consequences to shutting down the political process on an issue of such profound public significance. The inferences are chilling. Will a gavel or a gun on a battlefield overturn this decision? Perhaps the consequences of this putsch will be that the spirit of our founders inspires some Americans to risk their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor. In other words, fight to restore the, quote, precious right of self-government. Robert's allusions to social violence are disturbing. When we come back, we'll look at what Justice Thomas and Justice Alito had to say.
Hey, everyone's been asking me, when's Unstoppable coming out on DVD? Well, it's here. And I have created my own deluxe signature version of Unstoppable that contains not only the movie, but over 5 hours of additional curriculum and study guides for your family. It's perfect for your homeschool, educational facility, small group Bible study, and family devotions. And I'm going to share with you some of the spiritual warfare that surrounded the release of this film. This box set also includes extended scenes, new music videos, the inside scoop on the whole Facebook controversy. So what are you waiting for? I made this special version with my family in mind, and I know your family will be blessed by it too. Unstoppable 2.0 Deluxe Signature Version, available only here at KurtCameron.com. I can't wait for you to experience what's inside.
Justice Scalia said that if he had to get a fifth vote for any case, and he used the words that Kennedy's opinion used, he said he would put a bag over his head. He'd be so embarrassed. I am not even quoting on today's program from the majority opinion, and partly is because it's embarrassing. It wasn't written by a judge, I promise you that. It sounds like it was written by girls at a slumber party. Maybe Kagan and Sotomayor and Ginsburg all got together in their pajamas with slippers on in front of a fireplace and a glass of wine, giggling, and wrote the decision. It actually sounds like the script of a reality show for some pathetic cable station. It's mind-boggling. And Scalia literally mocked them, said, if I had those words, I'd put a bag over my head, because it's not about law. The decision was not about law. It was about the heady times that we live in. All right, let's continue. Justice Thomas said that this decision, in his dissent, he said it was an attack on religious liberty. He said it was a danger to religious liberty. He went on to give a long history lesson about the American Revolution. He referenced the framers, John Locke, the Declaration of Independence, and then he goes on, like Scalia and Chief Justice Roberts, to rebuke the majority. He said, and I quote, "The majority invokes our Constitution in the name of liberty that the framers would not have recognized, to the detriment of the liberty they sought to protect." Thomas closed with ill boding. He said, "The court distorts the principles on which this nation was founded. Its decision will have inestimable consequences for our Constitution and our society." And again, these are not my words. What I'm about to read to you are not my words. These are the words of Justice Alito. He also wrote a dissent. All 4 of the judges who voted against it wrote their own dissents, and most of them joined with one another in their dissents. Here's what Justice Alito said. Well, basically, he foretells of the persecution against Christians and anyone who defies this ruling. He said, It will be used to vilify Americans who are unwilling to assent to the new orthodoxy. In the course of its opinion, the majority compares traditional marriage laws to laws that denied equal treatment for African Americans and women. The implications of this analogy will be exploited by those who are determined to stamp out every vestige of dissent. I assume that those who cling to old beliefs will be able to whisper their thoughts in the recesses of their homes. But if they repeat those views in public, they will risk being labeled as bigots and treated as such by governments, employers, and schools. Are you hearing what he's saying? He said, get ready for the witch hunts. Get ready for persecution. Get ready for the efforts of the militant homosexuals and their allies in government and media and business to try and stamp out every vestige of resistance. Alito, like Roberts and somewhat like Scalia, he closes with a possible reference to force or revolution or just the political will to stop these godless judges. And by the way, he warned of bitter, lasting wounds. And those are words that show up in a lot of history books about the Civil War. Bitter, lasting wounds. Here's what he said. If a bare majority of justices can invent a new right and impose that right on the rest of the country, the only real limit on what future majorities of the Supreme Court will be able to do is their own sense of what those with political power and cultural influence are willing to tolerate. All Americans, whatever they're thinking on this issue, should worry about what the majority's claim of power portends. Friend, I will tell you, it portends great evil, great upheaval. And if the illusions of the justices are correct, violence. I'll be right back. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. It took me 14 years to write it. 4 rewrites, countless edits. I poured my heart and soul into Dragon Slayers. At points a very inspiring and painful book to write. I encourage you to go to our website and look at the reviews that we have gotten from readers of this book, and then avail yourself. It's an allegory, and I promise you, you'll be inspired. Alito, in his dissent, said that the Supreme Court basically is going to do whatever it wants to do, just not sure what it can get away with, and that'll depend upon the political will and the political strength of people that will oppose them. Even as I record this, Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court, Roy Moore, is standing against them. The Attorney General of the state of Texas said none of the people that work at the county level are required to give out these marriage licenses. There's rumblings from Arizona. There's rumblings from Oklahoma. I can only pray and hope that this is a bridge too far, and that people in various positions around the country will say, you can take this decision back to hell where it came from. We will not obey. And by the way, I encourage you, read all 4 of the dissents yourself. Read the opinion yourself. You'll see what the justices are predicting. I've left a lot of it out just because of time. They are predicting upheaval. They are alluding to violence and to revolution. So here's a question. Should the 5 judges who forced this upon us be impeached? Look at them. Ginsburg, Sotomayor, Kagan, Breyer, and Kennedy. Will these judges be impeached? Well, actually, the first question is, should they be impeached? Absolutely. Should they be tried for treason? They violated their oath of office. They took an oath of office to uphold the laws and the Constitution of the United States of America. So should they be tried for treason? Of course. I'll ask you this. Would our founders have fought a war to dethrone them? Well, according to Justice Scalia, yes. Listen to his words. To allow the policy question of same-sex marriage to be considered and resolved by a select, patrician, highly unrepresentative panel of 9 is to violate a principle more fundamental than no taxation without representation, no social transformation without representation. Close quote. You understand what he's saying? He's saying our forefathers fought a war over taxation. What do you think they would have done over despots, tyrants that tried to turn the colonies into Sodom and Gomorrah? Well, what they might have done is a discussion for another day. Now, as we talk about impeaching them, look, I'm no fool. Clearly, at this moment, the political will in Washington, D.C. to stop these despots, these tyrannical judges, does not exist. But thank God for heroes like Roy Moore and others that are emerging. Listen, folks, we must stand with these people publicly. We must cheer them on publicly. And we must be ready to endure any ridicule that comes our way. Listen, Jesus said, "Blessed are you when men hate you, when they revile you, when they separate you from their company, when they cast your name out as evil, because you stood for righteousness." You stood for what was right. He said, "Rejoice in that day. Leap for joy, for great is your reward in heaven." Alito predicted that they are going to try and stamp out every vestige of resistance, that they are going to try and make it so that we'll whisper in our homes, maybe our churches, what we really believe. But they intend to break the will of people to resist. Now, many of us don't know what to do. I intend to help teach you what to do. All right? If you're willing, we'll help you. I have been a leader in the pro-life movement for 30 years, and sadly we have not prevailed in our goal to make it a criminal act to kill an unborn baby. There's reasons why we have failed. I wrote this book, A Humble Plea, to Catholic bishops, to evangelical clergy, and to lay people, explaining where we went wrong and what we have to do to prevail. We've made this available as a PDF online for free. I encourage you to go and and download your own copy. Why does a nice guy like me keep getting thrown in jail? I have been arrested almost 50 times and spent over a year of my life locked up in various prison facilities. And I wrote a book, many books. In fact, one of them is called Why Does a Nice Guy Like Me Keep Getting Thrown in Jail? It's a theological work, answering those who say that the church should not be involved in politics or that we should retreat. I encourage you to get it. In fact, get one and give it to your pastor. Courage is like a muscle. If you use it, it becomes stronger. It stays fit. If you don't use it, it gets flabby. It atrophies. And after a while, it doesn't work very well. You and I are going to have some real tests of courage in the coming weeks and months. And I encourage you, stay with me. If you want to be taught what to say, the different ways in which you can say it, if you want to be encouraged to embrace God's will and destiny for you and to have the courage to do it, stay with me. And I'll tell you this one lesson about courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing what is right in spite of your fears. There have been many times when I've stood and my knees were knocking. Fortunately, I had baggy pants on, no one could see. But I did the right thing. I said the right thing. And that's what matters. All right, we have some questions we have to ask. What might come from the hand of God because of this decision? And then, of course, what do we do? Our duty as Christians is to strive to see all of life, to see all events, especially events like this, in the light of God's truth, and to respond to what is happening not as free moral agents, but as his servants, okay? From heaven's perspective, the only crime against God and man, the attack on marriage of the Supreme Court just unleashed, the only sin, crime that's worse is the shedding of innocent blood. If you look back to the book of Genesis, the first one is your brother's blood is crying out to me for vengeance. And then when you see the angels come down and meet with Abraham, we see that the cry of the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah is crying up to heaven, okay? We cannot overestimate the danger that this ruling puts us in. The scripture says, the wicked strut about on every side when vileness is exalted among the sons of men. That's what we're going to see. We're going to see wicked people strutting around. We're going to see, you've seen it in movies where someone suddenly comes to power and they've got their horsewhip. You will do what I say. Listen, it's vileness. God says that two men having sexual relations with each other is an abomination. Look at Leviticus chapter 18, verse 22. Behavior such as this is why he destroyed the 7 Canaanite nations. That was the promised land that the Jews took, okay? St. Paul, the apostle, wrote that those who practice such deeds have been given over to a depraved mind, and those who do such things are worthy of death. Sodom and Gomorrah met a brutal end because of this sin. And friend, God does not change. There's a lot of well-meaning Christians who foolishly think that God changes with the times. He used to think that certain things were sins, but not anymore. No. We must not shrug our shoulders and think, this is no big deal. This will have devastating consequences. When you talk about this, you can remember, you can call to the homosexual who's trapped in that lifestyle and say, God will forgive you. God will set you free from this sin. But you still have to say, it's a sin. And here's the thing. We don't get to change the rules. You can say it with a shrill voice. You can say it with a loving voice. But we don't get to change the rules. God made the rules about human sexuality and about marriage. We don't get to change them. So when you're talking to people, sinners or friends, remember, separate the two. Issue one is this person is trapped in this lifestyle. Issue two is they're trying to change the rules and say that it's not a sin. No, there is a God in heaven. He made the rules, and we are not God.